Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michele Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee, who have been a part of our journey for the last several years. So thank you, Folgers. We couldn't do it without you, nor would we want to. Also, big thank you to Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for the contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro you just heard. He is an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite streaming platforms. I will be all right. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist. Oh, can I just start that over? Sorry. Anyway, the artist behind our logos here at the show, check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also does specifically Halloween and horror genre, but does amazing commission pieces of any sort. So tonight, I've really been looking forward to this because Marilynn Hughes, who is going to be joining me, has been on before. And I like to say it was one of the early days fan favorites. And she is back to discuss, mystical theology, astral projection, divine unions, OBEs, all the stuff that we all love. I know what my people love. I do. I know it. And you're all welcome. Just going to leave that right there. Now, Marilynn, long list of credits to this amazing woman. So I'm just going to shorten it to a couple of paragraphs. Marilynn Hughes founded the Out of Body Travel Foundation in 2003. The mission, of course, is to reduce spiritual hunger worldwide. Marilynn has experienced, research, written, and taught about out-of-body travel and mysticism since 1987 and has spoken on dozens of radio and television programs to discuss her thousands of out-of-body experiences. So I want in on that. She has authored 138 books, 40 magazines, 18 CDs on out-of-body travel and comparative religious mysticism, including her seminal classic, The Mysteries of the Redemption, which is a treatise of out-of-body travel and mysticism, which was in development to become a feature film TV series, right? We're all going to watch that. I certainly would. Probably over and over. Anyway, she was featured in the documentary film The Road to Armageddon, a spiritual documentary, and in documentary film productions, The Grand Phase of the Soul, The Stairway from Earth to Heaven, How to Have an Out-of-Body Experience, and The Tao of Mysticism, the limitations into or initiations. See, I'm just really, is it Monday? Anyway, the initiations into the mysteries, the rites of passage, the prayer of the 12th hour, and at the feet of the masters. And if I had to really read all of it, I think I would just be lost in it because it's just incredible. So without further ado, let's welcome the incredible Marilynn Hughes. Hello.
Hi there. Great to see you again after all this time.
I know, it's wonderful. I'm so glad to see you. I have followed you and seeing what you're up to. And my gosh, what haven't you been up to is more along the lines of what I should be asking you.
I guess I'm always up to something, aren't I?
You are. I don't think you can settle down. 138 books. I used to sit there. I used to tease Preston Denton. I'm like, how many books are we at right now? And then I see your updated information coming. I'm like, 138 books. That's incredible. My gosh, you must just. Do you do it while you're out of body? Because I can't even imagine the amount of time that goes into, especially your type of research. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of research, and it does take a lot of time. Definitely a Holy Spirit filled endeavor. Couldn't do it without that. It's,
yeah,
literally it's a situation where if the Holy Spirit is on it, I'm just like,
I'm
but
in.
if
Yeah.
the Holy Spirit is not, I can't write a word,
Wow.
So it's like that,
Oh my, I can't even imagine. It's just it's incredible because you're really heavily researched
Yeah.
into topics like, I mean, just into religion itself when you're getting into all of these diverse writings.
Well,
How,
early on in my experiences, I was instructed in the out of body travel experiences to research the ancient sacred texts with the prophets, saints, mystics, sages, and ascetics from all world religions and cultures from around the world.
yeah,
And so I was really directed in that route, which is a little unusual.
yeah.
And some people find that different, and it is a little bit of a different twist to my particular journey, I think.
Yes, it is, but it's really, when you look at it, it's all connected.
Yes.
So why don't we start then with what I call humble beginnings? Because we're going to backtrack because we have so many more listeners now than when you blessed us with your presence early days. So what put you on this whole journey?
Well, it started, I did have a really intense experience vision when I was 9 years old. And basically, the gist of that, it was amazing, beautiful experience where I was lying in bed. If you think about it, 9-year-old kid, the heavens were roaring in front of me, clouds, roaring like this bluish, white, grayish,
Yeah.
thunder, lightning, and then it opens up to a beautiful marble staircase, golden gilded things all around, two golden thrones up at the top, who I
Wow.
perceive to be God, and the Son, divine Son, Lord Jesus Christ, next to him, and on the sides, all these beautiful angels lining up this staircase up to heaven. And to get to the gist of that experience, it was a pretty extensive experience, but the experience was giving me a foretaste that I had some kind of purpose that I had to fulfill,
Mm.
and that this was going to come back to me later, and that there would be difficulties along the way, but that I was to just kind of stand fast and just go forward. And so
Mhm.
when I was in my early days, I was 22. um, I had my first experience out of body travel in my adult years. And then it just started happening one after another and after another. I started journaling it. And those journals became my first books, which, the first books were Odysseys of Light, Crystal River Flowing, that were published by Hampton Roads in 1991 and 1992. And then those things, because I had like a 16 volume thing already plotted out for that, but that all got changed as I continued to have experiences, and I was directed how to rewrite that. And it ended up being reformed into what became the first book release of the Out of Body Travel Foundation in 2003,
Mhm.
when I founded the Out of Body Travel Foundation. And ironically, I founded that in 2003, ironically, partly because my former publisher had encouraged me, because he said, I really think you have a unique niche here. And so it became The Mysteries of the Redemption, a treatise on out of body travel and mysticism. So that
Wow.
was the first book. And it's always still considered like the seminal classic, the one I recommend to people to read first.
Mhm.
And it's a very extensive kind of text. And, and then it kind of continued from there, where I just continued having the experiences. I was continually directed. In 2003, the same year, I had a near death experience where I was sent back and told, I was shown like all of these bookshelves, and I was shown that they were my books. And you have to remember at that time I had written 2 books. And Jesus was with me at that time. It was an extensive near-death experience I've talked about in many other interviews. He said, I'm going to make good use of you while you're still here, you know.
Great. Put me to work.
I was a little overwhelmed because I was like, I was just looking at him like, I can't believe I'm going to write all that. You know what I mean? Come on. And so it just kept going like that. I started receiving, it begins in the beginning where you have these basic experiences that start with, all the basic things like learning how to get out of your body, learning how to move through a wall or a window, how to see and hear and move around, because you have to learn how to do things a little differently, how to travel through the astral plane, how to move through these tunnels and different corridors into these other spheres of existence,
Wow.
moving into the 5th dimension and above, and actually knowing how to move, which comes later, into the lower spheres, the purgatorial realms, the lower realms, knowing how all these things work. And so my journey was slowly unraveling all of this important knowledge about the universe. And I was being taught about how the mechanics of existence actually work. And it starts with understanding the nature of good and the nature of light and all of these transcendent things. But then I was directed also back to learn more about the nature of darkness and evil. And I had to do service in some of the lower spheres as well, help people in the hell realms, the purgatorial realms, souls in those realms. I had to learn how to work with souls subconsciously that are incarnate on earth, and so there's so much to it. I think a lot of times people think of out-of-body travel, they think of it as this little parlor trick or whatever, the paranormal experience, this little thing. It's not like that. It's this vast panorama of mystical experience where, this is our experience on earth, this tiny little blip. Once you enter into the out-of-body travel worlds, you have opened up an entire universe of existence beyond what we experience in a physical body that is literally eons beyond what we experience here. And so there is literally, so much to learn. It's like encyclopedias of knowledge that you start learning about, but you learn about it in a different way. So, for instance, I'm always telling people knowledge is not information, it's vibration. So you begin to start learning by experiencing things. You are taken to these places, they have different vibrations. And in order to progress, you have to go through these vibrational raisings. You have to learn, you have to bring these things into your physical self. And then you have to encapsulate it in your physical body. You have to process it through. You have to bring heaven to earth, so to speak. And by so doing, you are all these hundreds, thousands of little tiny steps are making you more and more compatible to these higher and higher worlds. And then you're able to travel more and more and more. And you're doing, you're working with the angels, you're working with these other celestial beings, spiritual teachers, spiritual guardians, and they're teaching you all along the way. You're learning all these things, and then you're also learning to teach as well at the same time. And your energy is constantly being changed as you're going through this. And so that vibration is consistently being altered. That frequency is continually being raised up. And that is what is so significant and important, because the knowledge that you gain will become vibrational more and more and more and more. The things that you understand are not stuff of words, but stuff of energy, things that a soul can express or know, but words cannot.
No, I love it. I love it. It just, I think, a lot of us sort of stumble into the experience,
Yes.
And you panic because you don't know what's happening to you. Or, sometimes you take off and there's this fear, Like I had this aunt. Oh, you don't ever want to leave your bodies. Just, something's going to cut your astral cord. Put the living fear into me. I'm like, what? I was having a good time before that. And that image doesn't leave you.
Yes.
Like, yeah, everybody's got that aunt.
Well, that's a very good point, because then here, as a response to that aunt, to help people out, here's the problem with that advice is that what do you do when you have an actual mechanism that all human souls undertake at night in different stages and different levels? So let me be more specific and more blunt. The experience of out-of-body travel occurs to all souls on different levels when they are sleeping. Some people are aware of it, some people are not. And so and this is something that I learned through my experiences, because we go and the angels are working on souls in their subconscious sleeping. And this is happening all the time, and it goes into higher and higher and higher levels until I had this beautiful experience in the throne room of God, watching God moving in the lives of souls on earth. So if you understand that this is a mechanism, out-of-body travel, and then we have to link it to all these different stages of consciousness. There's dreams, sleep. There's also out-of-body travel. People are slipping into these different stages of consciousness as a normal aspect of their day-to-day life. So if someone is telling you, oh, don't do that, the reality is you naturally do it. Even if you're completely unaware of it, you naturally do it. And this is why we all fall into it sometime, eventually. Not everybody, but you know what I mean? Because some people just stay unconscious of it for most of their life. And that's cool, because then they can, not be aware of it,
Yeah.
But, we fall into it in part because we all have these experiences. It's happening to every human soul. So that advice doesn't work for us, because it happens. It's part of our normal mechanism. It's part of the mechanics of existence. So what we have to do is actually learn to utilize the mechanism in a way that is useful for the soul, in a way that brings us closer to the all-holy God, in a way that brings about the things that are of importance in this mortal realm. So this is a mortal realm. And so here in this mortal realm, the purification of the soul is paramount. This is what is going on here. That's what we kind of do here as a general rule. And so that's what we have to kind of focus on when we are thinking of, okay, what are we going to do with all this? That's what we're going to do, because we're trying to work on the purification of the soul so we can become more compatible to the all-holy God, who is kind of out here and we're here. And so every one of these stages that we're taking place is bringing us a step and another step closer to that all-holy God. And then what you're going to experience in some of these travels or memories, or however people experience it, is that they will be shown things that will give them direction as to areas in their life where they can engage in some type of purification, make changes, do something different that is, bringing them over a hump somehow, that is, some kind of habitual behavior that is kind of getting you stuck in your spiritual life here in this life, or in a reincarnation cycle where you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you're not able to actually make that movement. And, one of the things I always loved was one of these angels would just say to me, let's go take a little walk in the movement today. Think about that. That's what we all need to be doing. We need to be taking a walk in the movement. what happens is we don't do that. We get stuck and we stay out of the movement. The movement is that spiritual outflow that is creating progress for our spiritual life. That's what we actually incarnate here on earth to do. And so when we try to avoid those things that bring that about, we are just kind of wasting a lot of time standing still. And then, when we get to the point where we, finish this life here and we get to the end, we're like, oh, did I do that again?
Yeah, let me just get back in the elevator and make my way back to planet Earth and
back to the elevator there. Oops.
Yeah, darn it, escalator. Okay, here we go. Missed the boat on that one.
Yeah.
So is that what they mean then when we, because I'll often say, like, I travel when I'm asleep, but I don't have recollection of everything. Sometimes I wake up knowing all this stuff and it's just like, God. And I researched, I'm like, oh, that's what that meant. But I don't have the recollection. So is that me having this out of body?
Sometimes you'll have a recollection of part of it,
yes,
or, and not the whole thing, or you'll have recollection and you'll be like, gosh, I know I did all kinds of stuff, but I can't remember what, right?
All the time. It's sad.
Yes. And, the forgetfulness is all part of it too. Mm-hmm. And that's, part of it. It's necessary. It's part of the way that this mechanics of existence works to help us in the physical realm to try to go through this earthly life and realize these things in a physical body, and bring them to physical fruition here on earth, And so, that's part of the reason why we have these memories of traveling, but yet they're not always that clear, or it's just like a partial thought there. And it's like, I know I did this, but I don't remember what the rest of it was or why, or,
Yeah, it's true. I'm terrible. I am terrible with that. I want to shift a little bit over to frequencies, vibrations. Sure. I don't think people have a real understanding. I mean, some people don't believe that we have frequencies at all. I mean, I think it gets into science and things like that. And other people, like, I think I'm an energy worker. I do a lot of energy work, especially planetary stuff. So for me, it's just like I can feel that vibration. I could feel like frequencies. I'm affected by frequencies, like when I hear them. So can you explain a little bit about that to give an understanding?
Well, the thing about that is very important is that, when people do go towards having an out-of-body experience, one of the most common things that most people will experience, not everyone, but most people will, is the vibrational state. And that's very heavily reported. And it's a very important part of the out-of-body experience. And I'll explain why. Mm-hmm. Why this happens is because your consciousness has gone deep enough that you are detaching from your physical vibration, which is lower, to your spiritual vibration, which is so much higher that all of a sudden it's like, and all of a sudden it's like, and it's like literally like you're lying all of a sudden next to a jet engine, and it's so loud, and your body is vibrating like a, I've
done that when I'm awake.
Yeah. And so, when you have that and you're vibrating like a jet engine, and that doesn't even qualify to even, it doesn't really even describe it correctly, but it's the best thing I can come up with. Mm-hmm. And then you go into this vibrational state. And when somebody goes into that, that's when they can say, they don't have to ask, did I have an out-of-body experience? That's when they're like, oh, I know I did. That's when you disconnected from your physical vibration to your spiritual body's vibration. Mm-hmm. And then you're able to either will yourself out, roll out, or do something like that. And then you're going to proceed to an out-of-body experience. Mm-hmm. But then what happens is, as you continue down this road, you will enter into the vibrational state, and the angels will come in and they will take you in the vibrational state, and they will rev that vibrational state up to a level where you think your head's going to explode. And it is so intense. It is so intense. And they'll do it like this. It'll be, and they will just push it up higher and higher and higher, and they'll just keep doing it. Sometimes they'll do it for hours. Sometimes they'll do it for maybe a half an hour, just depending on what they're trying to achieve. They will do this because this is how they basically prepare us to get to another level. So, you know, when you first start having experiences, you might be floating around the astral realm, which is basically fourth dimensional travel, which is the realm that overlaps the third dimensional travel, right? And that's a very low level realm. It's a mortal realm. There's a lot of stuff going on there, like wandering spirits, lost souls, ghosts, and just trickery and things like that. There's also nice little spirits there too. But when you're actually being taken on a spiritual quest, which you will if you have the correct intention here, you're going to be quickly guided away from the astral realm into higher realms of travel, fifth realm and above. And really it's much, much higher than the fifth realm. You're going to be going into these higher spheres. And that's where we talk about the initiations into the mysteries, the rites of passage, these celestial cities in the sky, the galactic heavens, you know, the heavens in, you know, heaven is found beyond the black hole. You travel through the black hole and you go in there and you pass through the sacred matrices, the geometrical figures. You go through a star tunnel of red, yellow, and black. And then you move into another kind of swirling tunnel to get in there. And then there's another corridor where it's all these amazing stained glass windows of Jesus and the apostles. And then when you arrive there, well, I'm laughing.
There's another tunnel. They make you fight for it.
Actually arrive in heaven. This is what's really cool, because heaven is our home, right? You know, so it feels very homey, you know, and so you're just like chilling, you know, I'm chilling, I'm in heaven, this is cool.
Yeah.
You know? And then, you know, you come back and you're like, wait a minute, there were aliens in heaven.
Okay.
And then you remember and you're like, wow, there was so much going on, because there's people, you know, who are dressed in all sorts of different eras, you know, people from the past, you know, from the 1800s, from the, you know, BC, BCE, and, you know, all these different ages. But there's also different forms of life from different universes around our own. And it's so normal, because heaven is our home, that when you're there, it doesn't even occur to you that this is anything out of the ordinary. But when you return to your body, you're like, oh, wait a minute, that was an extraterrestrial and he's in heaven. You know what I mean?
It comes back to the fact that source creates all, right?
Exactly. Yes. And then, you know, so then, you know, there's also the other discoveries you make up there too, is that, you know, up there in the heavens, we have the Palace of Ancient Knowledge, which is where all the ancient sacred texts are stored. You know, so I'm taking through all these things about gather the ancient sacred texts. And I have this, you know, 5,000 plus, you know, library here with the ancient sacred texts from all world religions. But in the galactic heavens, the Palace of Ancient Knowledge has all things that have ever been written on Earth. So there's scrolls and these huge books that are like, I don't know, 2-3 feet in height. And they're just so holy that you see them across the room and they just glow like gold. And they're just so beautiful. But there are also ancient sacred texts of galactic origin. And I'm just so excited about those.
Have they let you see them, or are you still working your way?
They've let me touch them, and they've told me that at some point I will be allowed to translate some of them. But it's just amazing to see. You know, we are so limited in what we realize is happening all across, you know, the universe.
Yes.
It's so much more. And so out of body travel is really, it's a tool that actually opens up this grand spiritual journey that allows God and his emissaries to literally awaken us and take us home. And what we find is that it's easier when we allow God and his emissaries to guide it, and we kind of get out of the way and we surrender to what they want to do, they want to show us, because everything that they have to show us is so much better than anything that we could think up. So, you hear a lot of people always saying, well, I should set an intention, shouldn't I? And I'm like, no, don't do that. You'll come up with some lame idea.
Just wing it. Yeah.
Let God tell you, because God's got some really cool things that you could never think of.
That's I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Cindy on X. Hello, Cindy. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Who says, when we talk in our sleep, is that part of astral travel, or is there no speaking, all telepathic, do you think?
Well, most of in the astral experience, when you're speaking to other beings and spirits, it's primarily telepathic. But that doesn't mean that when you're talking in your sleep, you can't be having an experience where you're talking or trying to talk to another being in an experience of some kind. Because our general nature is to speak. And so we will do that. But when you're out there and you're meeting with a spiritual teacher, a guardian, or a guardian angel, or any number of type of beings out there, even ghosts, lost souls, whatever. Well, and sometimes with ghosts, they might be more likely to enunciate things because they're earthboundish type souls. But generally, things are communicated through thought. And you'll see that a great deal as well with the extraterrestrials, because the extraterrestrials, even in their embodiment states, often have this they have that psychic transference, and they do that even when they're embodied. So they will do that, but it's very much the way things are communicated in that state. But that does not take away from the fact that you can be doing that, and it can be part of an astral or out-of-body experience.
I've apparently spoken in Aramaic, had an entire conversation.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, my friend comes, he looks at me, goes, I'm like, why don't you record it? He was talking down the hall, and he's like, why don't you record it? I really didn't think about it. I didn't want to lose the moment. What the hell? I would have liked to have had that translated, but yeah. It was an entire conversation that went on. Apparently, like, I was annoyed, which is not like out of the norm for me. It's just like, oh, of course I was. Anyway, next question. Marilynn, do you think the true Egyptians were onto this?
Oh, I think so. Yes. The Egyptian mystery schools were actually doing this in their temples. Ironically, in the initiations into the mysteries, I was taken into a lot of Egyptian mysteries. And, oh, you're very welcome, Cindy. I was taken into a lot of the Egyptian mysteries. And one of the things I was taken to repeatedly was the Hall of Records, which was below the Sphinx, and also another Hall of Records, which is underneath the Great Pyramid. And you'll see that I wrote about, there's some interesting things revealed about those things when you're undergoing the initiations and the rites of passage. So yes, the Egyptians were definitely very much aware of this. And you can even see that just from reading the ancient sacred texts, where it's revealed very skillfully. But definitely when you go into the initiations and rites, the Egyptian mysteries are a big part of it that comes in, Ironically, what you'll see though in those initiations and rites is that a whole lot of different angles will come in. So you'll have the Egyptian mysteries, the Native American mysteries, the religious mysteries from all of these different religions and faiths. And it's fascinating because the mystery of, remember, the mystery of these religions, and that means, let's go back to the mystery of the prophets that they were founded upon is deep, you know. And so that means you think about people like Zarathustra, you think about Hermes, you think about Thoth, you think about trying to remember them all. Obviously, Christ and Buddha and Krishna, all those ones.
Those who would be looked at as the masters.
Oh, yes, yes, definitely. One of the things that we put together, one of the films we put together was called At the Feet of the Masters. We went through a lot of these amazing masters, but I also wrote a book called Near Death and Out of Body Experiences of the Prophets, Saints, Mystics, Sages, and Ascetics in World Religions, because we forget that a lot of these world religions were founded on great out-of-body travel experiences. Yes. You know, amazing revelations given to people in out-of-body travel experiences. And so that's
ancient knowledge. Right? I think those are the things that you're taught. It would have been taught in the mystery schools, but I think people who are just very connected to source as well would have naturally been able to do it. Just like I think children can naturally do it. I had a son that just went like nobody's business. And one time, I guess it was one time when he just had a hard landing and he goes, I don't ever want to do that again. I was like, sorry, what did you come in head first? Like, you know, and he says, no, I just slammed in on my feet. And because it was just very uncomfortable as opposed to coming down and gently, you know, but I think maybe it's because he just wasn't aware that he was doing it.
Well, and one thing that he can do, because, you know, I remember I had, like in the very beginning, I think it was my second experience, or maybe it was my first, where I was really afraid and scared and terrified. And I remember praying and asking for help. I asked God to give me protection and to give me guidance so that the next time would not be so terrifying. And it wasn't because anything was terrifying about it. It was just because the experiences are so powerful that it's just something so unknown when you first come across it. It kind of blows your mind a little bit, and you wonder if you're going to die. You wonder all these things. What's going on? You know. Mm-hmm. And the next time, as a result of asking for that, I had 3 angels on each side of me that gently took me out and guided me the whole way and made it so very peaceful and calm. And so don't ever forget, you know, to ask for help and assistance, you know, when things go wrong or whatever, because things will go wrong. And there are also things that you're going to experience and see that are going to be difficult, you know, because one of the things we do learn about spiritual warfare. And, you know, we put out a two film documentary on spiritual warfare, on preparation and combat that we have, because it is such a big thing in understanding really the mechanism of out-of-body travel and the whole concept of our spirituality. There is a spiritual warfare that is part of that. And so everything about out-of-body travel is not going to be pleasant and all light and love. There will be the negative aspects of existence too. But that's part of what our learning is. Our learning is to understand the nature of good and evil, and to understand the nature of the darkness and light within our own soul and within the souls of those around us and those we love and within this world. And then by understanding it, we become more capable of transmuting it as the angels, the guardians, the teachers that are sent to us are helping us to do it. And so it's not an effortless journey. It's definitely sometimes difficult. And, you know, I could tell you a whole lot of times where, you know, it was like, wow, that was intense. I don't know if I want to go through that again. You know what I mean?
And you're a pro.
It's all worth it, though, because it is all about that purification. It's about getting to that place where you can work towards becoming more and more of a realized human being, where things make sense. You understand them. You're able to move forward. You can live in a greater state of peace with God in your heart. And it changes who you are. in a very, very good way. But the journey is like any journey. It's not always easy, but the journey is, that's kind of the way, isn't it? The journey is the way.
Being like Frodo, getting ready to go on a quest.
Yes. It is a little bit like Frodo.
Fellowship. Yeah, I think part of it is letting go of the energy. I mean, I could tell you I'm not good at that. I mean, obviously, when I'm asleep, I'm all okay. I'm in. Let's just go. But but I mean, I had a Reiki session at one point. And she goes, "Oh, I'll line your chakras up." And I'm like, "Okay, great." And she was, a Reiki master. She had studied in India. She just had beautiful techniques. And the very first time, I've only done it twice. The first time, she couldn't do it. She says, I've never quite encountered any situation like this, but my whole body started shaking tightly, and I could hear in my head. It was just like that 747 you're talking about.
Yes.
Going on in my head. And I'm going, am I taking off or what's going on? She goes, I can't get you to release your energy. I says, well, I'm a little protective of it, but I'm here to try to have this experience, and it just wasn't happening.
Well, what immediately struck me when you started talking about it is that it's very possible that there is something to this that comes from a past lifetime, something that you've got that's attached to you from a past lifetime that's significant enough, that has to do with your spiritual journey, something that scared you enough, or something where in a past lifetime, I'm just going to go with whatever comes to me right now, but something in a past lifetime where maybe you took it too far with power, and you're afraid of going over that boundary again. Maybe it's something where I think it's something related to something in a past existence where you are afraid of whatever happened that time. And that and I think it is a spiritual obstacle. It's something that happened spiritually, and it might have been that you were in a position of some kind of spiritual power, and you may have abused it a little bit.
Oh, this like me too.
Is it?
Well, I know of maybe a handful of my lives, and of course, I also with my lineage as well, which would make a lot of sense, because I've always been taught just to really be careful with my energy and to not let people try to manipulate it. I'm just trying to get my chakras lined up. That's just all I'm there for. Not trying to do anything fancy, but yeah. But the second time she goes, "Can you come back? I'd like to try again because this is pretty weird for me." I said, "Sure," and it went flawlessly after that. But I had to really condition my mindset to say, no, it's okay to just let it go, which is why I'm kind of saying, I guess part of being able to freely just say, I'm going to lay down here and I'm going to just let myself go and not worry about letting my energy or my higher self, or whatever the case may be, just my essence, just let it go.
Yes. And letting it go, but with the proper protections of God in place. Because I do feel that fear that you have, and I think that fear has something to do with
my aunt. That's your astral cord. You're not going back to your body.
Well, and to be fair as well, your aunt isn't completely incorrect. There are things that do happen in these out-of-body experiences, and there are people who shouldn't practice it. So for instance, anybody who's ever been exorcised, who's been under the care of a priest and been under exorcism, should never practice this or pursue this. They should just not do that. People who have had trouble with deliverance in the past, who have had difficulties, let's say someone who had a really serious situation with a really, really haunted house, they should probably not do this. They need a lot more protection.
Well, so yeah, that I was going to say, because I spent 2 decades helping people in those situations.
Right. Yeah. So there are
I slip
situations.
over, I need to be
So
very
it's good to
cautious.
point that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And, there are people who, and I used to do that a little bit, but that was a long, long time ago for me. But I did it a little bit. And there are cases, as I'm sure you're aware of, where people who have done that have had serious difficulties. Things have happened to them. And so these are things that, we don't want to tell people that, oh, no, nothing ever happens, because it does, And,
Well, like I find also with people, for example, with, let's say, autism, Down syndrome, I find them very, very advanced, psychically speaking, and they bring things back with them. It's similar to, I think, people who have, worked, like I said, I've worked in a field where I've helped people get rid of malevolent things, and things, it's always a concern, is something
right,
going to slip through that door,
right, right.
you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that may also be part of the fear
For
that you
sure.
have. And it is absolutely a
Yeah.
legitimate fear. And so part of the
Yes.
process, I think, for you is acknowledging that that's a legitimate fear. You have legitimate experience in your background. Your aunt was expressing to you something from her own experience, which is probably a legitimate fear. And there's nothing wrong with her expressing that. And lots of people's aunts have probably expressed things, which are legitimate.
Yeah.
And a lot really does come down to how you're practicing this and for what purpose. Because if you're doing this as a parlor trick because you think, oh yeah, I want to see if someone on the other side of the country can see my numbers on this card here.
Yeah, no.
Then you're just wasting your time. It's pointless.
Yeah, no.
You're doing it because you're like, oh, I want to be a black magician.
Oh, God,
or I
no.
want to be a magician.
I think I do it when I sleep. I know it's a thing, and for me, it's like, okay, if I meant to do it, I'll do it. I know I have an amazing
Right.
degree of protection, and because I always say I work with my ethereal team. I can still do all that, and it's just like I don't have any fear of anything that I do.
Right. And I think that there's a difference between pursuing it because of, this desire or this desire to know God more, to know the truth, and to seek to become holier, to become more aware of your own, flaws and imperfections, and where it becomes literally a practice in mystical theology. And that's where it's more like, like this, which is the mystical theology and astral projection, which is, when you're looking at, the mystics who really did practice mystical theology, which is the science of the self, the science of learning about your own flaws through the study of the virtues and through mystical experience and insight. Then there are those who might use out-of-body travel for other reasons. It could be magical means. It could be power. Those things are dangerous. Yes. And if you do it for that reason, yes, you're going to be in for trouble, big trouble.
Yeah, it has to come from your essence, right?
I'm sorry, what?
It has to come from the essence, from the soul, from a place of love.
But it has to also come from placing God as sovereign over everything that you're doing. And that's the protection that I was sensing even for you, that when when you're doing this or when you're going to sleep at night, offering some prayers that are clearly asking for God's protection and God's will and guidance over you during whatever journeying may happen at night, so that these things that you experience are under a different kind of domain, so to speak. You see what I
want to
mean?
make sure I go down the right hallway, Marilynn.
Right. I love the way you put that. That's really good. It's all about going down the right hallway.
Yes.
And and again, going back, out of body travel itself it's a tool. It's not like enlightenment itself. It's a tool. People can use it for good. They can use it for bad. But the good that it can be offering is that it becomes an opportunity for people to know the truth, to know God better, to know themselves better, and to be able to move closer to God and, to holiness. But you have to use out-of-body travel in that way. And if you use it in another way, it won't produce that same fruit.
Okay. Noted on that one for sure. Another question, Cindy, is there an archangel that is assigned to assist us in astral travel?
Well, not necessarily. Now, like some of us will have experiences where we will see them sometimes. I've had a lot of experiences with St. Michael, St. Gabriel, and Metatron. I'm trying to remember but anyway, a lot of people have seen St. Michael, and they might see him once in a while, but St. Michael is very, very powerful. He is, and the archangels are amazingly powerful beings. And so when we are granted to see them, it is truly a major holy honor. And so it's not generally something that most of us will receive, like just as a regular, like every day they're there. Oftentimes we all have a guardian angel, and oftentimes we will be assigned even teams of angels. Like I have these teams of angels that help me, and a lot of people have that depending on what their vocation in life is and what God wants them to do. But the archangels are just so spectacular. And I've written about the experiences that I've had with them. I did a painting of St. Michael the way I saw him in one of my visions, but just amazing. And I've seen them in, a few different ways, and they're just spectacular. So I wouldn't look at it as something that they're there with you all the time. But you can always pray to them and ask for their help, because they do intercede. And I've definitely been in spiritual battles where I've called for Archangel Michael and he has come. Most of the time when you're in spiritual warfare and you're actually doing battle with the demonic, yes. Jesus, the name Jesus is the most powerful thing. And boy, it does that. The demons can't handle that. Try to say Christ crucified to a demon and their skin is going to literally burn. And so, one of the things I learned early on was the power of the name of Jesus Christ in spiritual warfare. And so you have, the power of the Holy Mother, Jesus Christ, St. Michael. But I even had a couple of experiences that were really, really cool where the Buddha came and even Zarathustra. And Zarathustra came and battled for me, and it was really cool.
Yeah, see, there's perks to doing what you're doing.
But going back to the archangels, there are some people, I won't name names because I know that some of the people that I'm thinking of that have very, very holy callings in life and who are much greater than I, who do probably have the protection of St. Michael on a pretty constant basis. But those are very rare, unique, very holy souls. So that might be unusual. But I do know the archangels will come when you call them.
They do.
And so, there's the St. Michael prayer, which people can look up and pray. St. Michael, defend us in battle, be our defense against the wickedness and the snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, St. Michael, I can't remember the rest right off the top of my head. It's terrible.
No pressure.
You can look it up and pray that prayer to St. Michael. And you can also just call for him. Because a lot of times when you're in a spiritual warfare situation, you are actually being kind of muted. you're having trouble even calling out for help.
It's true.
You're screaming out for in your mind because you can't speak, you can't shout, you can't do anything except sweet Michael.
Well, and there are times when you can speak, but you can't get the prayer straight. It's like you can't remember the words.
Exactly. Yes.
You know, it gets kind of tongue-tied.
Yes, that's true.
I hear that a lot, and a lot of times that I've been doing this, it's just people say I can't get the words out.
Yes.
So, and that seems to be a common factor. So,
well, and this is an important point you're making too, because this is part of the reason our daily practice is so important. I'll just make a little note of it here, which is, the daily prayer, spiritual reading, and meditation, because all these things fuel that interior life, and it helps us when we are in the out-of-body travel state, and if we are called into any kind of spiritual warfare, it makes it more, it fuels it so that we are more likely to have that Holy Spirit with us at those times when we need it. I know that St. Padre Pio always really pushed for the daily spiritual reading, really a big deal. And, and the prayer and the meditation is just so important to help us keep fueling that interior life that we need.
And well, he's modern times for us as well. So he's just so easy to relate to,
Yes.
I know that when Notre Dame burned, there were people who had tapped in and saw him there praying.
Really?
Yes.
Cool.
So, you think about it, like they're so aware of everything that's going on. And it was such a special place, far beyond, when I was there, it was an incredible experience. But I spent, in all my travels, I try to make sure, like throughout all my travels throughout the world, I'm a nut for the cathedrals and the old castles, and I love the energy, the architecture. But because you can feel the resonance right from the stone. You can just hear feel the chanting and this all of the vibration, all of that energy that doesn't go away. The stone retains that.
Well, even the particles in the air, the molecular structure of the ether, the air, everything is retained energetically. One of the things you see in the out-of-body travel state that is surprising, I think, at first, is how everything has energy. So even like your couch,
it's true.
all the inanimate objects that we have, we often think about, a sentient life. We don't realize the stones, the rocks, the dirt, the land, the water, even the things that we make. So the couches, the chairs, the paintings, the pictures of our children, everything has consciousness. When you go out of body and you float around and you see this, and you're, often something that you're shown and given instruction on, so that you start understanding that all of these things have this unique and important consciousness. And it helps you to better understand certain things. And I'll just share a story because it's relevant to a vision I had last night for a spiritual student of mine, but it goes back to Padre Pio. Padre Pio often talked about this one monk that he saw who had passed away, and he would be at the altar, cleaning the altar, because he was doing his purgatory because he wasn't diligent enough about keeping that altar clean, right? When he was alive. So he would be out there doing that now. And one of the things that I had a vision about this last night for somebody who's not understanding the importance of cleanliness being next to godliness and how that impacts the chaos in our mind or the order in our mind and our spirits, right? And you think about that and, look behind me in this holy altar and how the importance of taking care of these things, if we understand that they have consciousness and that we are creating this consciousness that surrounds us every day of our lives. that we create an environment that is going to sustain a certain type of vibration that will encourage us to be in a particular type of field. That would be a clean, holy, pure field that allows us to reach into higher, finer frequencies of light, and makes it more likely that we will achieve, spiritual experiences, mystical experiences, or things that will continue to instruct us in the spiritual path, the spiritual way. And so we have to remember the smallest of things when we understand that everything around us is filled with consciousness. So it's everything that we're creating, but that means everything we're also taking care of. So, these beautiful little creatures in my house, my cats, they have their consciousness, and everything that I do to cultivate that beauty within them, but also the beauty that I cultivate around me to create a certain type of field that I want to vibrate into on my daily life. And that is part of then also the prayer, meditation, and the spiritual reading, which is what we ingest, the spiritual food. And St. Padre Pio was so strong about that spiritual reading, because that keeps our thoughts and our mind in a particular space, which is really necessary for us to be able to rise above our physical world and not just stay grounded at the
and that makes sense to me. I say at ground level, because realistically, you don't want to leave your body within a negative space. You want it to be a well-grounded, loving space.
Right.
Yeah. Because
yes,
do you think that's why there are the powers that be out there, and you have these other entities, living and ethereal alike, that keep things negative, fear-based. So we're always living within this fear state, which goes into the collective consciousness, because I've worked with the collective consciousness of just putting in this, bombarding it with positive energy and light and words. And every day I put up positive words to the consciousness. Just, I have tested the theory so many times, like with really obscure words, and then you just see it coming up and people saying, I'm like, see, it works. So, but on the flip side of that, you have those who are the anger.
Yes, yes, absolutely. You're working in the field of being, the field of collective consciousness, and that's exactly what it does. It's either going towards the negative or the positive, and what we put into it has meaning.
Yes.
And then what we choose to funnel through into our own reality, so to speak, is also has great meaning, because what do we choose to focus on in our reality here? Because we can choose to focus on whatever we choose to focus on. We can focus on the negativity, or we can choose to be in a different type of space. Hi to whoever that was. That was so fast.
I just plopped things up there, like all these great comments to be seen. If you factor in the ancients, they definitely had an idea of how this worked. They could create power spots, or they would build monuments on power spots. They would live around power spots. Our indigenous people throughout the world, they had an understanding that, through oral history.
Yes.
And why do you think we have? I mean, they've been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years. Why can't we just seem to pick this up with ease?
I think it's because we have, I guess, just to be blunt, I mean, I think we've become a little bit arrogant. And we have,
ouch.
We've fallen away from some of the simplicity of the past, It's very easy actually to see how we've actually embraced a lot of noise since the internet came along. Ironically, you remember how things were before the internet?
Oh
and
gosh. Yes.
and how
Yes.
different it was, in terms of
Yes.
it was easier to find a way to embrace the silence, to create places that were completely quiet. And then, now, especially when you think of the younger people who have not had that experience, so they don't remember it like we do. And we're like, oh, I know how to do that. I used to do that all the time. I can do that. I mean, they don't have that. This is the way that their life has always been. And so we have this arrogance of, when I speak of arrogance about it, I'm talking about how we think we're smarter than the ancient people. We think that we have all this scientific knowledge, and therefore, and a lot of times too, this scientific knowledge is used to debunk the collective mystical experience of humankind, and to debunk the experience of the ancients, which is, something that's been around forever and is very much a part of all the traditions of the world, no matter which part of the world they were from, and at times where no one in those parts of the world could have communicated with one another. One of the things that anthropologists had discussed before was how it was fascinating in terms of Stone Age religions, and how shamanism erupted in every part of the world. And the practices were almost identical, even though none of these people had any contact with one another. And the only answer to that is that they were touching into the same spiritual world. And so we've lost this humility, which allows us to accept that science doesn't explain everything. And science is actually, if you look at the scientific method, it's not set up to explain non-physical reality. It's set up to explain physical reality. So we need mystics to help us to understand non-physical reality. And that's why we bring together the prophets, saints, mystics, sages, and ascetics from all periods of time in the world and from every single culture and faith. And we put them all together. And then all of a sudden we have this amazing mass of knowledge and wisdom, because you bring them together and it's like the diamond that we know as God, which is, so let me try to make that more clear. So every one of those mystics or prophets or saints or, little desert monk.
Yeah. The guy on the hill. Yeah.
God was speaking to each one of them in his own way. And each one of them received their particular piece of the diamond that we know is God. And so every one of those facets comes together with this amazing tradition of the ancient sacred texts. And so every one of these things that we learn about, it's like, this is how we get to know God better. It's like, if you want to get to know somebody, you get to know their friends, right? So reading the ancient sacred text is like that. It's like saying, I want to get to know God, so I'm going to get to know his friends. And that means I'm going to read all these ancient sacred texts from all these people that have spoken to God throughout the years, the ages, the centuries, from every religion, every culture, and every cult. And I'm going to see what's similar, what's different, what's what's a little, and what's fascinating is that when you bring it all together, there's one body of knowledge. And when you bring that body of knowledge together, it's like, wow, I understand God better now. I understand him because I have brought the facets of the diamond into one big diamond, and it all makes much better sense. I'm not trying to define God by the tail on the elephant. No. I'm trying to define God by the entire elephant. Yes. I'm trying to define God by all the facets in the diamond, and bringing them all together and giving each facet equal value. And that's so important, because we forget that, well, it's equally important that God spoke to, St. Anthony in the desert, and that he spoke to St. Catherine of Siena, and that he spoke to, the Aborigines in the ancient Australia. And all of the amazing, prophets of the Native American tribes, and also all of these really cool things in the Pahlavi texts of ancient Zoroastrianism. And, like your one viewer, the amazing texts that we have from Egyptology. I love those, and they're fascinating.
Mhm.
And then we have so many more. We have so much more, Hinduism, Buddhism. We have the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, which was written by Guru Nanak and some of the other 10, the Sikh masters. And then we just have this wealth of knowledge from people who have spoken to God.
Mhm. Mhm.
But what happens is this, where the arrogance comes in. We have modern day people, modern day thinkers who say, no, they didn't speak to God. And so everything that they did, their entire life's work, is totally irrelevant. And then we sweep it aside. And that's what I mean by arrogance. When I say we become arrogant, we won't even look at it. And that's when, well, okay, we cannot see.
That's academia, right? That's not
If we don't
spiritualism.
even look, we cannot see.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. It is very difficult. It is very difficult. I think there are those, in this world that have access to a lot of the ancient knowledge that the common people do not have. I think that, I had Christian Miller on yesterday, just brilliant man. And he's like, he said there was so much that because only, wealthy people, elite people of going back way, way, way back, who could read and write, whereas a common person couldn't. So when they leave the area, whether it be through cataclysm, whether it just be through relocation, a lot of that information goes with them. Therefore, so much is probably still hidden in private libraries and such throughout the world that we will never have access to. So there's probably so much more out there that we'll never know. But, with that being said, there's also the arrogance, I believe, of those who think that they can maybe just keep people from tapping in to things like having out-of-body experiences, tapping into being able to just open up their mind's eye. We have like entire satellite systems over us with grids of energy and frequencies and things going on all the time. Do you feel, because you have so many people that will come to you through your foundation, do you feel that there is people struggling because of this?
I think that you'd be surprised how many people I hear from who are really seeking and finding a lot. I think that what people struggle with is being labeled as a kook or as that they're crazy to have the experiences or to believe in the experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the arrogance really comes in. It's like, okay, it's easy to just dismiss people or to dismiss an entire, body of work because it's mystical in nature. And that's actually, ironically, that's bad scientific work as well. It's terrible scholarship and it's bad scientific study.
Mm-hmm.
We have so much, and just in my own house, and this is just the stuff that we do have, thousands and thousands of texts that we do have that are available to people if they want. And, for people who are interested in kind of just even getting a culmination of it, I've written a lot of books on, world religions and mystical theology and mysticism and all that. And you can get a general idea of, the comparison of the different religious traditions and things, a lot of books there. And by the way, everything on the website you can download for free, and it's at outofbodytravel.org. So you can download whatever you want, have a good time with it, and you can always send me questions if you're having trouble finding what you're looking for. But there's a lot there that really helps, like a lot of people to, sift through the, do not have to do the 40 years of wandering through the texts like I did, and just to get the information from it. A couple of books that you can take a look at is like The Forgotten Mystics, Lesser Known Out-of-Body Experiences. that one, and the near-death and out-of-body experiences of the prophets, saints, mystics, and sages. Those are good ones to kind of just get an overview of that. But I think that it's just bad scholarship. It's bad science. This is evidence. This is evidence of the unseen world, just like near-death experiences and the thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are having them is evidence of life after death, and also of mysticism as well. So we have the evidence, but they don't want to accept that evidence. And so there are people who are accepting that kind of evidence, and there are some people out there who are doing some really great work on that, and that's fantastic. But there are a lot of people just in the mainstream who think that it's that they can't do this with any other field of study, but with mysticism or out-of-body travel, they feel that they can just categorically just say, oh, that's just for crazy people. And it's like, no, you can't. No, there is a huge body of knowledge, and this is evidence. This is evidence of mysticism. Has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with you. This has to do with all these thousands of mystics that have lived for the last 5,000 to 10,000 years. In the case of the Rig Veda, 40,000 years ago. But we have some. We have literally thousands and thousands of testimonies, and from every age, every culture across the world, and in every religion and every place. That's evidence. And so there's no lack of evidence. There's no lack of information out there. It's right there, right in front of us. Literally. One of the things I always say to people is, this is the gold, and it's laying out there in plain sight, and we didn't realize it. The key to what we're here for, and the key to figuring out, how do we find our way back to God? What we came here for, which is, well, why are we all here? We're all. Everyone's always saying, well, what are we?
We're having a human experience.
We're having a human experience, but what for? And that human experience is this path to purification. It has to do with karmic purification. We're in a mortal realm. It has to do with the recognition of the good and evil within ourselves, within the people we love around us, within the world around us, and learning about how to purify that within ourselves, and understanding it within the world around us, and then transforming that, and then transmuting it into something higher. And then when we are able to do that to a certain degree, then we will be able to graduate to the next level of evolution upon our death here, rather than just continuing to circle into reincarnation after reincarnation and do the same thing over and over again. This is the gold, guys. This is the gold. That's why you're here. We're all here. We have these different vocations and callings and purposes in terms of what we're called to do, in terms of jobs or, unique things that we're, going to work in our lifetimes and things like that, how many kids we're going to have and which souls we're going to nurture in this life and all those kinds of things. But the bottom line is, if you're incarnate here on earth or in any mortal realm, that's why karmic purification, a path of purification. You've got to identify those things in your life that are against the light and love of God, that things, the darknesses that you may not even realize, the habitual behaviors that hold you back. You have to see if you can start moving, transforming, and overcoming some things, and move closer and closer towards the light.
That's tough for some people. This is a good question. Is the soul trap real?
Well, if you can tell me what that means, I will be happy to answer it.
Okay. So essentially, it's a line of research that's going on. It's a theory that's going on. You know how we get so conditioned to hearing, to fearing the darkness, and to always gravitate to the light, always gravitate to the light. And part of those theories are because there are, especially if you get into like Gnosticism, there are the archons and so on, that we just keep getting recycled back here, which is why so many souls struggle even to be able to have an out of body experience. Just this whole recycling process where you automatically, whether you want to reincarnate or not, end up right back in the pool. So, and then the conditioning, it's, all the conditioning that's attached to it, because I've never feared the darkness. Obviously, like, there are many theories with that. So what are your thoughts on it?
Okay, so let me make sure I understand this.
Yeah.
So the idea being that you automatically,
When you die,
just reincarnate without any.
well, yeah, like the soul trap is just sort of like, I guess, going down the wrong hallway because you're just sort of duped into coming back. Like they don't let you go into your potential, I guess, where you're supposed to go, because you'll hear some, some spirits, if you communicate, you'll say, oh no, like they do go towards the darkness because of all, like my uncle, for instance. I said, is it everything you thought it would be? And he goes, it's more, it's better. He goes, there's so many little lights. There's so many lights everywhere. It's just like being among the stars. I'm like, oh, I've never quite heard that one before.
Okay. And so I'm sorry, I'm not following how that works with the soul trap.
The soul trap is essentially being forced back into reincarnation and not making it to the real spiritual realm or heaven that we're supposed to go to.
Okay. All right. So I would say in the very literal sense,
yes.
I don't think soul trap is real.
Okay.
But what people might be getting at is there's a lot of things that happen. So like, we do have things like lost souls. We have wandering spirits and these kinds of things. Lost souls are people who a lot of times it's people who died suddenly, who didn't believe in life after death, who got confused and or might have been a really fast, or like an explosion happened and they don't even realize that they're dead sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it has to do with their belief systems, and it might even have to do with things that things in their life where they get kind of stuck. Wandering spirits can be spirits who are more sometimes purgatorial souls that are doing some kind of purgatory on earth, and souls that are doing some of them can be souls that are wandering around of their own kind of because they choose to, and they're being allowed to for a time, because that's not allowed for, there is a universal divine will that oversees everything. And that's why the soul trap is not a real thing. Mm-hmm. So what happens is when people go and see, part of the thing is, one of the things that I was called to do is work with souls who are coming and going. So I work with a lot of people on their afterlife journeys. And the afterlife journey is not some random thing where people are like, oh no, I got picked up and sent somewhere over here and it was the wrong place. Yeah. It's not like that. It's very, very eternally directed, where everything is so clearly set by what you are compatible to. Mm-hmm. So what you are compatible to has a lot to do with where you are going to be going in your afterlife journey. And there's a great deal of, things related to purification after death, things like that. But there's nothing like that where there's a big mistake, a big cosmic mistake, and someone is just sent back and forth over and over again for no,
like in a loop. Yeah.
No. That is not, this is a loving universe that is about education and teaching and souls progressing and having the opportunity for progression. And this is a universe where the moment a soul calls out for help, God sends it in a less than a split second, and you can see this. I could see this in my own experiences, but you can see this even in near-death experiences where people talk about having gone to hell or to other dark places. And the moment they either pray or call to God for help, how fast did it happen? less than a split second.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's true.
And so,
Yes.
yeah, so keep that in mind, because I don't want people to be afraid here. God does not do that. That is not what God does. That doesn't mean that there aren't lower realms, but that's a big subject, but no, people are not put into a soul trap. Reincarnation is a much more well thought out process. And if you want to understand reincarnation, I actually have a really good recommendation. The best thing I think I've ever read on this is by Francisco Candido Javier. And he was a Brazilian mystic who died in 2002. He was born in 1902, I believe.
Wow.
Yes, and he was very prolific. He was very, very loved in Brazil. And he wrote, the first book is called Nosso Lar, and it translates to Astral City. And there is actually a film called Astral City. If you can find one that's in English, there's sometimes ones that are overdubbed that you can see on YouTube. I think there is one. I used to have, in fact, I think I have one that's actually overdubbed in English myself on DVD. It's a great film. But it's part of a 12-volume series of books. It's called the something Ruiz collection, and it's about the journeys of this soul after death. And in Astral City, it goes through his experiences right after death and all this, and it explores why people reincarnate, and then it goes into all the different processes and the decision making and why it happens and how it's brought about, and it's very, very well done, very detailed. So if you want more detail, you can go in there. So reading those books is really helpful. Just even watching Astral City is helpful. But the books are going to give you a lot more detail about how does reincarnation, the mechanism of it, really work. But the mechanism, just for a quickie here, the mechanism is something where the reincarnation is always thought out about what do we need to accomplish energetically in this soul? What does this soul need to overcome? What are the relationships that need to go in with this soul that need healing, and what exactly needs to happen? And what are we going to set in motion or set up so that these things might occur? You know what I mean? And so the soul is actually a big part of that decision-making process. It is not like, it's not like, you're just
out the other chute.
Yeah, you're not going out the other chute.
Right.
Now, there is the fact that if you need to go back, you may not have like total choice in the matter. You may have to go back, but generally what happens is by the time that's come to that conclusion, the soul also agrees, because the soul now understands why it's necessary. And they understand what needs to happen energetically. And they have all these understandings. But again, they have to bring that from heaven to earth. They have to bring it from the celestial ethereal realms into physical embodiment. And they have to do it knowing that they will have amnesia when they incarnate. And so it's all the same things, but there's never any kind of, and I understand that the Gnostic belief had a little bit more of this idea that it was like this crazy, free for all. It's not like that. It's not like that. Everything that I've ever seen has been so kind, gentle, and well thought out, even for the souls in some of the lowest hell realms. I have seen some of the most amazing things in terms of how the mercy of God works to help a soul to actually evolve from there. It's always about the soul always taking steps higher, no matter where they are on that spectrum. And so I know that's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to really.
No, it doesn't. When they say that we decide, because there is that, that theory that something we decide, what we want to do when we come back, along with your soul circle or your soul family, your tribe. People have many different,
Yeah, and probably
different
the way I should put
terminology.
it is just to say that at least my experience is
Yes.
that this soul trap would not be the way that it would happen. So in my experience, I would say no. That so I shouldn't just say no for like because I'm not God. You know what I mean? But
Yes.
but in my experience, I would say no. I don't think so. All the things that I've seen, it has always been much more well thought out and much more compassionate and loving of a process when that happens.
How would you categorize time travelers? There's so many reports of just random people showing up in modern time, for example, or someone from the past, the future, the past, crisscrossing. But there are sightings of these people. Are these somebody that just sort of, materialized in astral mode?
Well, I mean, I guess I'd say a couple things. One is that I've had experiences where I'm taken into different time frames myself, and so I know that can happen in the out of body experience for sure. So that can definitely happen. So that can be, but I also would have to say it's probably something that it would have to be. Each situation is entirely different, and I don't think that I know enough about like where they're coming from and all that. And they probably have all kinds of really cool things to tell us that I don't know about. Hopefully they do, but there could be some that have nefarious.
There's a curiosity.
Yeah. But I know like in my own experience with out of body travel, definitely you can do that. I've been taken backwards in time. I've been taken forwards in time. And so, when you enter into the out of body travel state, you're often taken into what's called timelessness. And so all time is now. And so you can travel anywhere on those timelines that you choose. And so I wouldn't be surprised if at some time in a future timeline, human beings or other extraterrestrial beings or whatever, other beings somewhere, figure out how to do that in an embodied way, completely embodied way where they can move around the timelines and do so in the way that people are reporting that. I just, it's obviously over my head as to how they're doing it, but I can't say that you can do that in the out-of-body experience.
Okay. I'll go with that. Cindy says, do you help people who have an illness to astral or OBE to heal? Or would that be too hard if they were not well?
Well, actually, yes. And I actually have a book that I put out. We put out this series. Starts out with this one, the complete manual of out-of-body travel and astral projection. There's the advanced out-of-body travel. There's 28 volume set. And mystical theology and astral projection is one of them. But there's 28 volumes in this series, and one of them is on out-of-body travel healing. And so one of the focuses in that book is not only is that a good thing to do, because and I've had it done for me many, many times when I have been taken out specifically by my angels to take me to specific places for healing. So a lot of times they'll take you like to an amethyst bed or to like a room that's just pure quartz crystal, all the way around. And they do these things where they tune you to these things. And then there's also things that have, like purely Christian based or type healing things that happen, or the angels do things with them, themselves that are just frequency things. The vibrational raisings that they do, they'll do healing types of things. But also they will do things when you're in your body that have to do with vibration when you are sick, to help you to recoup your energy. A lot of people already know this, but back in 2001, I developed cardiomyopathy and heart failure and was typed out for a transplant. Wasn't supposed to live very long. I was given 6 months to a year, 5 years tops or whatever. And I had a condition which shouldn't heal. And in 2015, it did heal. And there's a long story behind it, including the near-death experience I had in 2003 with Jesus, where we had some interesting conversations. But I received a lot of healing, and I have no doubt that it was a gift from God. And even one of my cardiologists has said, I don't know if you realize that that just doesn't happen just by taking medications alone. What happened to you is not normal. And he said, I just wanted you to realize that. I wanted you to know that that's, you got a gift from that. That was a gift. And I said, I told him I appreciated him telling me that, because a lot of times in the medical field, doctors are afraid to say so when something happens of a nature like that, because they don't want to get, dragged into that stuff. And, but there are cases once in a while where a doctor will remind me, and he'll say, I saw this and this should not have happened. I had another doctor who said the same thing. She was a Catholic doctor, and she looked at my medical records because my priest wanted to, look at submitting it as a miracle. And she said, this is a miracle without doubt. And so my definite answer to this is absolutely, you can receive all kinds of things through vibration, through frequency, and through all these interesting things, that some of which, you never know what it's going to be. Sometimes it's sound.
Sound therapy was huge back in the day.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you'll be taken out of your body into these like the spheres, and you'll go and you'll be flying through the heavens, listening to the music of the spheres, and it's like the most beautiful music you've ever heard, and it's extremely healing.
I've heard it in real time.
Yeah. And so you'll hear that and you'll come back, and so it's like the music, sometimes it's that vibration, sometimes it's the crystal cave things that they take you to, where they lay you down, and sometimes they'll put you on these crystal, they're like rectangular boards, and oftentimes it's like a quartz crystal rectangular, it's like a examining table, but it's a crystal quartz table, and then the angels will be all around you, like 3 on each side, and they will do this energy stuff. Sometimes they'll put different types of stones on different chakras. And, I'm Catholic, so I understand how crazy this sounds, and that, gets me into trouble when I say these things, but they do happen with your chakras. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they also do things with crucifixes and with holy water and things like that as well. But the reality is, on the other side, there is power in certain types of stones. And it doesn't mean I'm telling people go wear stones everywhere, because I'm not. I'm just saying that
it's from the planet. It works.
Yeah, it's definitely something that God created, and it does have a transmitting power, and it's used in these experiences to help with healing. And it's mostly, what I've experienced mostly would be the amethyst and the quartz. For the healing purposes in those caves. And those are usually the caves, or like the rectangular table, like I'm mentioning. And then there's these other ones that I don't know what they are, but they'll put them on your specific chakras, And but then it's also the light, sound, and the frequency, which is all about what the angels are doing. And then they do stuff when you're in your body too. And that's important to remember for people who are sick, that you don't necessarily have to be out of your body, because they will do stuff when you're in your body.
No, absolutely. When I say, I'm a believer, absolutely. When my mother was passing, before I even knew she was going to pass, for 2 straight weeks, I was hearing all kinds of different music, anywhere from chanting, Viking music, indigenous, angel choirs, Gregorian chants, name it. Whether I was asleep or awake, I would hear it constantly. And it went on until literally the day she passed, and everything stopped. And oddly enough, a friend of hers who was very gifted had talked to her on the phone before she passed, and she said, "Don't you know the angels are singing for you?" And I'm like, freaking A, they are. Freaking day and night for 2 bloody weeks. But it was so fascinating to me. And the things that I was hearing had to do with ancestral as well, as
Yeah.
the different types of music. But the angelic stuff went like, it would bring you to a brink of tears because it was just so, the way it hit the core, it was just so moving and so powerful,
Yeah.
to just, and you're just hearing it coming out of nowhere. I'm just like, what the heck, At first, I'm like, oh God, I'm awake, but I mean, I'm falling asleep at the same time. So then it kicked up, and I was just hearing them while my living, like my waking hours. I'm driving, and it's going on and on. I'm here, it's going on, and it goes back to part of our lineage, 100%. But it was incredible to have that experience. And since her passing, I think I may have heard it twice, and it's been now a year and a half.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And
Yeah.
a lot of times people too will smell fragrance.
All the
Smell
time.
roses. They'll smell other beautiful aromatic fragrances. And I wrote a couple books about those things. Let me see if I have them here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote the fragrance of the mystical rose. And, fragrance mysticism, because it's actually a thing where where part of the way that we bring ourselves to part of the way that we shrink that whole space between us and these higher spheres is by fragrance. So utilizing fragrance, we shrink that space, so we're making those smells that are common to these higher spheres, and that kind of helps us to shrink that space between us. And so we do smell things too. And a lot of times you'll hear that reported around, the saints and whatever, but you also hear that just around regular people who will have, like in a situation like a parent is passing or someone is passing who might have led a saintly life or a good life, and all of a sudden you're smelling something aromatic and fragrant, and it has something, and it has to do with them, And so all these things are related to that whole idea of mysticism. They're all part of it. They're all part of it.
It's definitely a deep. The knowledge runs really deep. If you know what to look for, amazingly, as deep of a rabbit hole as it is, it makes its way to you with such ease.
Yes.
If you know, to recognize the synchronicities, and just recognize the language of the universe. It's in the stars. It's in the signs. It's in the incredible things have happened. It's in your dreams. It's in your messages. It's just in visitations. It delivers.
One of the things I love that what you're saying there, because to me that is like one of the best definitions of mystical language I've heard. Because a lot of times, there he's calling it spirit language. There you go.
Yes.
And I always call it mystical language. And it's like you read things like the Dialogues of St. Catherine of Siena, or you can read even, the writings of Guru Nanak, or the writings of the ancient rabbis, the Kabbalistic rabbis, or the Sufis. They all have this mystical language that they share, even though they're different traditions, Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, everything. It all comes together, Egyptian, all of it. And this mystical language is something that if we can learn to understand it and to speak it and all of that, it actually it transcends and takes us into these higher worlds. And one of the things that I've had to learn recently is that it doesn't come to everybody naturally. And I always thought it was just, but because I'm a mystic, it came to me naturally. But I'm learning now that to other people, it's not always natural. And so it's something that we have to cultivate so that people can come off that ground level and start learning the way that she put it, which was beautiful. A mystical language. It's the language of the stars, the language of the trees, the birds, the air, the language of the sea. It is how all creation speaks. And I'm getting totally slammed with energy. And that's what mystical language is. And that's how the mystics spoke to one another. And that's how they speak in the ancient sacred texts. And the mystics understand the mystics. And each one of us has that ability to learn that language. But it does take some cultivation. And so it's okay if you don't, automatically just pick it up. It doesn't come like automatically to everybody. Sometimes it takes cultivation and time because of our different gifts that we have.
Yes. Wow, it's hard to believe we're already at the top of the hour. Where did the time go? My gosh. So you will be coming back, of course, and I'll get you some dates on that because I just really want to continue where we left off. So in the meantime, I'm going to put up your website again. I have put it up in the feed. Where can people find you aside from this, and what do you have coming up? And
Well, definitely come to us at outofbodytravel.org. We have another new website at astralprojection.co where we have this fantastic course of study, which will help you to start learning how to read, how to read and learn mystical knowledge, that's for sure. And it's free and everything. And we also have a really nice YouTube channel. And of course, we have a Mirror Rumble site. So whichever one you're most comfortable with, please join all of those things and subscribe and like our videos. And, you can download all our books for free. You can watch all our films for free. And so just let us know whatever it is. If you're having trouble finding anything, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. And so follow us all those places and let me know if you're having trouble finding anything. I'll lead you there.
Well, I certainly am going to go find you on Rumble because we are also there. And I think it's a great, great platform. It's picking up speed. But thank you so much, Marilynn.
Thank you. I really enjoyed talking with you, Michele.
Thank you. I always enjoy our time. And I know Amelia, would have loved to have been here, but she's on a bit of a hiatus, medical hiatus. So we always have our warm wishes out to her, and maybe she'll be back when you return, keeping our fingers crossed. But I will absolutely reach out to you and get some dates out to you because I can't wait for part 2.
Me neither. Sounds awesome.
Thank you.
It's like connecting with an old friend. And I love that.
Yes, thank you. That's how I feel. It's just like pick up where we left off, like you weren't even gone for all this time. So we're going to pick right back up also. So everybody in chat room, thank you all for joining us. And thanks to everybody out there who is listening. And guys, tomorrow night, we welcome Rowan Bow, all the way from Australia. She's going to be talking about her book, The Travelers, An Experience Guide to Extraterrestrial Disclosure. She is just awesome. I've just been having such a blast communicating with her. But anyway, you have been listening to The Outer Realm with myself, Michele Desrochers, my special guest, Marilynn Hughes. We've been broadcasting on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3, 107.7 FM from New Orleans. And big thank you to Steve McGinnis, to Folgers, to Justice Snicker. We appreciate you all so very much, and we shall see you tomorrow evening. Good night, everyone.